Well, good evening, and welcome to another edition of COS Indiana Live. I'm Ken Kashuba, the State Communications Coordinator, filling in for Dale tonight. Dale happens to be doing his due diligence in self-governance tonight as he is attending his meetings on dealing with the issue of voting coming up here in November. He's going to be a precinct chairman. To get involved in that. So participating pretty much in his self-governance. He's actually, practicing his self-governance, and it's always good to have a state leader who leads by example. So we wish Dale the best tonight as he learns about what his duties will be coming up in this very important new, election. And I am here at this point, usually as the co-host. But tonight, I guess I can be called the host. So with that in mind, as you are joining us, please, I'll remind everybody that we welcome everybody tuning in to join us in our chat area. And certainly I will have to do double duties tonight as handling both the chat issues as well as the hosting of the program tonight. So we do have a good program lined up for you. We will be bringing back Debbie Stewart is one of our regulars, and I think we've got an interesting program for you tonight as we talk about some of the things that I think will be on most people's minds. I have to apologize for a little bit about my vocals. I have been dealing with the last week or so with the usual fall allergies that hit my sinuses, and I think I'm on the back end of getting it cleared up, but I still feel a little bit like I'm talking in a can. So if I sound a little nasally, that's probably what it is. But I think at this point I will take over for what Dale normally brings on at this point, and he usually talks about at this point how many different episodes or shows that we've done here on COS Indiana Live. And tonight it actually brings up number 170 broadcasts that COS Indiana Live has done, and it's been it will make my 38th, in case Dale wants to keep track of that, and we'll say that just so that it's recorded and he can't say that I missed one or something. But this, I believe, would actually be the first miss that Dale Parrish, our state director, is experiencing. But he's got a good excuse, so we'll let him go with that. With that said, we do have probably a number of. The format will be a little bit different tonight. Let me just put it that way. My guest Debbie Stewart will be bringing her on here shortly. We'll be talking a little bit about law enforcement, our police, our FBI, our border patrol. So we're going to get into some issues I think that are becoming more and more of an issue that I think most American people are concerned about, and I think there's probably a large segment of people that don't even realize there's a problem, and I think that's another whole show probably if we start talking about media. But that's kind of be the topic tonight, and it doesn't get us far off of our usual focus of what can I do type of broadcast that we've or topic that we've generally looked at. So that'll kind of be our topic tonight. And then we also have a video we're going to show tonight that kind of fits in with everything that we'll be talking about. And of course, we'll have Marengo Mike, who will bring up our Slido presentation tonight. So with that, we'll go ahead, and I think we'll go ahead and just bring Debbie up, because she's going to have to kind of fill in as our guest and kind of a sit-in co-host, I guess I'll call her, because I've got nobody else to talk to tonight. So I don't have Dale to ridicule, or I won't say ridicule, I'll say prod along. There's got to be a good co-host always prods his host a little bit just to get that personality out of him. It's kind of like Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson always had somebody to kind of push him along. So we're going to bring Debbie Stewart on here, as she is a familiar face here on COS Indiana Live. So come on in, Debbie. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, except for my allergies that I've been talking about here. I'm usually full throated, but let's still just kind of mending, getting on the mend a little bit from those fall allergies.
There are a lot of people that have been out this last week or two at the school I teach because there's just allergies and colds and things going around. So yeah, it's been interesting to see, certain kiddos gone. But getting back to what you said, I'm sad Dale's not here because we don't have anybody to kind of, prod or, give a hard time to. So
give a hard time to. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I didn't mean to say ridicule. That's kind of harsh, but yeah, give him a hard time. That keeps Dale honest and humble.
So, absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of those fall allergies, I had to take my dog in last week too, and it was funny because he started the usual itch and licking his paws and all that good stuff. And when I got him into the vet said, I've seen nothing but allergy cases with the dog. So it's not only affecting us, but it does affect our furry friends too. So I know you have a dog. I don't know whether he's had any issues, but he or she.
Well, I know I took her to a college baseball game the other day, and all she did was lay on her back and do this to itch her back on the concrete. So I'm thinking she's got some kind of allergies going on.
Yeah, that doggy shuffle. Yeah, it's familiar. Well, Debbie, I know that I kind of laid it out a little bit that we'll be talking a little bit about law enforcement tonight and from the civil side of things. So I think you said you wanted to start off talking a little bit about the police.
Yeah, so I thought, Dale had asked me to do a civics lesson. So I thought, well, I'll cover a few of the areas that we have that are considered security in the United States. So I was going to go over law enforcement and then the FBI and then Border Patrol, that whole agency there. Customs and Border Protection Agency is the full name. So if you're okay with that, I'll start out with law enforcement.
Sure. Yeah, go right ahead. Law enforcement is a good place to be.
Okay, great. Well, everybody knows who our law enforcement are. They are our friends and our protectors. They are the good guys. They are on the side of doing the right thing, law and order, justice, and peace. And they are just citizens who are helping other citizens stay safe and have security. So let's talk about what does a law enforcement officer do, because we see them in certain places, but we forget there's other things that they do too, that they don't just direct, traffic or watch how we drive, but there are other things they do. So it's not necessarily what you see on TV and the crime shows or comedy or drama, but the law enforcement officers are humans that are dedicated to their work and to the community they serve. They play a big role for us. They help people, they sacrifice their time and energy, they protect us, and every day they put themselves in danger. And especially in the last couple of years, that's really become important, is they really do put themselves in danger. I mean, if you're just helping traffic at a stoplight and you get shot at, something's very wrong there because you're wearing a uniform. And we've kind of pulled away from respecting that uniform because a small percentage of them aren't doing the right thing. But I would say 98 to 99% of them take the job because they care about people.
Yeah, it seems to me that is a very small percentage of people. I mean, I think it's, if you look at any category you take any category, there's always a very small segment that is ruining it for everybody else, or right. At this point, making it dangerous. And yeah, I mean, it's not only the most probably underpaid position, but certainly one of the most dangerous positions that anybody could take.
Yeah, I have a good friend, and her son just started as a police officer here in Indy, and all of the training he has to go through, and the dangers and the things they have to watch out for, and the precautions they have to take, and the gear they have to wear, and all the things they have to make sure they do to make it right. It's really amazing to me. It's a serious job with potentially serious consequences. So, I always, when I see people that are in uniform, I thank them, like I said, because 98 to 99% of them are doing it for the right reasons. That there's that 1% there that might have the wrong idea. But but they do put themselves in danger every day. They enforce the law. And by the way, they're enforcing the law that we, the people, make, right?
That's right.
So if we're going to go through the trouble to elect people to make our laws, we want somebody to protect us when people don't follow the law. We want them to enforce those laws because that protects the law-abiding citizens. They respond to calls for help. They work to prevent problems. They stop those who are causing problems, and they maintain the peace in our communities, issue citations, and then, of course, they arrest people when it's necessary, those who break the law.
Well, I think it's important, Debbie, too, for those police officers that are the bad apples. It is one of those things that I think well, of course, it gets so much attention in the media that I think people start to think that this is the way most police departments are run or have these these bad apples in them, and I think it's so overblown. Yet I think it's been shown pretty much, if you go back to the George Floyd case, that police officer received his judgment. He received his day in court, and certainly at this point is paying his penalty. So I think that we have to be prudent in that as well, as far as weeding out these bad officers. But I hear you.
Well, and I think that we could take any job description out there and find a small percentage of the bad apples. But if we said they were all like that, we'd have no jobs left that are out there that they're good people in. I mean, I think as we look around our neighborhood, most of the people in our neighborhoods are good people. They mean well, but you've got a few apples out there that they could care less about being your good neighbor. And it's going to be across the board in anything we do, right?
Yep.
So
look at, we have bad teachers to pull up today. I mean, now we have to be aware of our schools and our school districts, and there are some bad teachers out there as well. So I think one of the things I think I sometimes, and I don't want to get too far off track of what we're doing here, but I mean, talking about bad teachers, I think about sometimes some of these college professors that get tenured. I don't know whether it's a good thing to be able to hand somebody that type of license, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm saying it right, but if you've got a college professor, and certainly our schools and our colleges are having their own problems. You've got somebody who's out there who's not a good college professor, and yet he doesn't have to worry about anything. That's bad too. So didn't mean to get off track. I just thought I'd throw that in there for good sake.
Listen, I had a tenured college professor for calculus, and he would test us on the next chapter that we hadn't covered yet. So he literally would take a certain 10 to 20% of the exam we had, and he would put a question or two from the next chapter that none of us we hadn't covered, and he couldn't get in trouble because he was so tenured that they just didn't care. Yeah. And several of the students went to him. So we all need to be on our toes and be doing a good job. And we need to be able to get feedback and be evaluated from time to time, because that keeps us staying with what's right and good.
That's true.
It keeps us, doing a good job. So, but back to our uniform officers, they patrol regular areas in the city or the county. They respond to emergency calls. They enforce traffic laws. Some have what they call regular beats. So like in big cities or routes that they travel. And we've seen them in police cars, on horses. We even have police boats, motorcycles, you name it.
Yep.
And then there's another kind of group that's the university police, and we're thankful for those, because if we have children on campus or we've been to college before, we know how important those university police are to keep law and order there. And then there's other law enforcement people like detectives and dispatchers, officers that work police dogs, researchers in crime labs, and also those who work in jails and prisons. So all of those people, sheriffs and deputy sheriffs, they do the same kind of work at the county level that the police do at the city level. And in many places, like a sheriff is elected, so that's good. We have a lot to say about who that person would be. Then you've got your highway patrol. Everybody knows those ones. They're the ones out seeing if you're speeding or not. But then there's some that are a little less popular, like the fish and game wardens. They enforce boating laws and rescue operations and hunting laws. And I'm thankful for those people because I grew up in Lake Erie and we had boating accidents all the time because people did not learn the laws of boating. There's the green light is on the starboard side, the red light's on the port side, and you have to know who gets to go first. And when you're traveling at night and you don't understand the green and the red, there's a head-on collision, and people every year there's explosions and people dying from boating accidents, and it's super sad. So
yeah, of course you always have the alcohol-related crashes too in the boats, and then some people think, well, it's it's I'm not going to drink and drive, but drinking boating is okay. And I've read about a lot of deaths that way too. But
yeah.
I've had my share of being stopped by those DNFs or those good old nature people, and basically just to check and make sure I had my fishing license. So
yeah, of course.
So it's good to know they're out there because it's part of being a good citizen. So.
Right. We don't always like it when we're caught doing something we're not supposed to be, but we're thankful that they're there as a group because that's what keeps law and order.
Right.
And actually we're going to talk about this because what happens to law and order when we start to take them away? So in the last couple years, we've had this whole defunding the police movement, and it's very interesting. I look up some quotes here, and this is a quote. It says, socialism is impossible without smashing the institution of the police. Right? So we set up the policeman to be the oppressive role. And again, there's always a small percent, but not everybody's like that. But this was a quote from Vladimir Lenin, who was a huge socialist / communist. And he said, socialists are irreconcilably hostile to the police because the police are the chief instruments of state power. So they know if the police start to go away, then somebody else can take over.
Yeah. Yep. And also it leads into areas that I sometimes you hear about. Well, obviously you think about this in other communist countries where they set up they have their own militia or their own military type police that they put in place. So yeah, the regular beat cop and those that are out there to enforce our laws, they definitely want to get rid of.
Well, and that's the thing. Your local police are going to serve the local people for the right reasons. A federal police force that would come in would only be serving the federal agency that put it into effect, which may have nothing to do with your good where you're living locally. And so if the local police or law enforcement ever go away, that becomes a federal state of control. Because there's nobody to oppose it anymore, right?
Right.
And so that would be a scary situation. But so I'm just bringing this up because many people are seeing the defunding the police narrative, but what's behind that? Because if you remove the police, then law and order goes away. Then you can bring in another group if you wanted to say, well, gosh, things are out of hand and the police aren't working. So here's my federal group or my national police. And then they are only accountable to the national leader, whoever that is.
Well, it's interesting that you say that too, because it seems from what I've read and seen in polls that minorities living in the big cities and those that the media kind of wants to tell you is a race issue. These people are calling for more police. They already feel the sting of not having a cop on every corner. And those groups are growing as they realize at this point that hey, I can't even walk down to my local market for a gallon of milk without worrying about being shot at or whatever. So yeah, I think there's a growing segment of minorities and other people that have been used in a race type setting that are standing up and saying, no, I want the police. So
Well, and could we really have done a little prediction here? Like whenever you're going to do some kind of a project, you count the cost. Okay, if we do this, what could happen? So for me, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you take away money from the police, law and order goes away somewhat, and there's much more chaos and crime. So let me give you a few stats here of these cities that went ahead and did this. Okay, so let's look at Louisville. They cut their budget some, and they had a 78% increase in homicides in 2020. 78% increase. Milwaukee, 95% increase in local murders. Chicago, just on the July 4th weekend, 87 shootings in one weekend, and the killing rate has gone up by 50%. New York, the shootings 130%, the killings 50%. It's just people are missing more. If they were more on target, the killings would be much higher.
right.
LA killings have gone up 25%, shooting and 32%. Here's an amazing statistic here. The shootings in South Los Angeles, the first 2 weeks of January of 2021, I think it was 2021, went up 742% the first 2 weeks of January.
That's unbelievable.
So I'm just giving you a few of the stats. I mean, there's so many more.
Yeah. Well, and I heard, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I heard just a week or so ago, Miami, the mayor of Miami, was being praised because guess what? He increased the budget. They increased protection, and they have the lowest crime rate in the nation right now.
Hey,
Miami.
that's
And you would think
amazing.
Miami would be that.
Increase the budget and the crime goes down.
So,
to me, that's just a given. I mean, that just makes sense to do that.
when you look at the numbers, Debbie, it's hard to understand how people can't look at these two, equations and say, let's just do what's right. I don't understand what. Well, I guess I do. I mean, at this point, I think most of us realize that there's a certain percentage of people that want to tear it all down and don't care how many lives are lost to get there. For an ideology that is proven not to work anywhere else in the country. So
right, and I think we forget that one of the jobs of government is to reward good and to punish evil.
Yeah.
And if you're a good person, you appreciate when the evil are punished because that evil might come into your home and hurt your children or your property or take your groceries or something that you worked hard for,
Yeah.
And so the people who are doing good and the people who are living their lives and just being honest people and they're working hard and they want to take their kids to soccer games and go to the grocery store and be able to provide for their families, those people who are breaking the law are not my friends. Because eventually it's going to bump up against who I am and who my family is. And I don't want that for anybody else either.
I think most people just want to live a simple, peaceful life. I mean, that's really what most Americans want. And at this point, it's really gotten so far out of control, and the numbers are so bad right now that I mean, it points again to the fact that we do have an important election coming up, even though it's only the start of putting the brakes on, so to speak.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, do you want to move on to the FBI and talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Let's talk about the FBI.
Okay. All right.
There's always some interesting things to bring up with the FBI. So, what do you have there?
Yeah, so just a little bit of information. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, they investigate violations of federal law. That's their main job. They were formed in 1908 as part of the Department of Justice. And originally, they investigated four major areas of crimes. They were either banking, bankruptcy, naturalization, or fraudulent land sales. And that was the original intent. But guess what's happened over the years? Their jurisdiction has expanded greatly. And so now, as more federal laws were created, which we know there have been many, then they're like, well, then we need to be a part of that. So now they look at foreign spies, illegal activities of communist agents, violations of civil rights laws and organized crime, And we know they use like some of the most advanced technology too to investigate and look into these potential crimes and to fight crime. So, so that, really is the main thing. I didn't get like down into the weeds about the FBI, but one thing I have noticed is that recently there seems to be like the FBI has no bounds at all.
Yeah, and that brings me into a little bit of, I guess, a couple of things that kind of come into mind while you're talking about that, and being the fact that you haven't really looked at and or intended to go into any depth, but obviously you mentioned the federal laws that are created has given them more things to do, I guess, so to speak. But
Right.
when you talk about foreign countries and spies and all that kind of stuff, wasn't that really designated for CIA? Wasn't that kind of more of a CIA type designation? Or
I thought that it was, and I don't know if now the FBI and the CIA are actually like crossing where they're both in this kind of the same thing. That's a great question. I'm not sure that I know exactly what the jurisdiction of the CIA is right now, but it seems like, the Central Intelligence Agency versus the FBI. And I didn't have time to go look at the CIA, and even like I wanted to do Secret Service too, but I
right.
just didn't think we'd have enough time to cover all those.
Well, that might be another area we could focus on is coming up is the CIA and those type of investigative bureaus. And really, I think it would be nice to be able to find out exactly how these things are kind of meshing together and what their roles are, because I agree with you. I think the FBI is just, they're all over the place at this point, and
Right.
unfortunately they're even investigating people that are making a little noise at their local school board. So I think that goes back to really who our justice system is being headed up right now, and that's another whole probably 3 shows is
Right.
looking at those people that are in charge there. So
Yeah, I had a couple questions written down. My first question was, are they weaponizing? Is the FBI being weaponized? Number 2, who is in charge? And number 3, are they for the people or are they for the global governing board, whatever that is, that's influencing the?
yeah, and I think the word you hit on there that probably is one that we have to be paying more and more attention to is the global. The word global is something that I think definitely is something that we. There's certain things I think you can always be globally aware of, but anytime you start giving away power to global countries or global institutions that don't line up with our Constitution and our way of life here in America, we are giving away freedom. Is what we're giving away.
Absolutely.
Giving away. So.
And we're giving more power to agencies and federal groups like that, and less to us.
Yeah.
That is not what our founders intended at all. The states were in charge, and then there was this small area that the federal government had as their job, and that was supposed to be it.
Yeah, Debbie, let me take a break here for just a second. I've got a couple of questions. I'm not sure whether we'll be. Obviously, I don't know whether you did any real statistics looking on these particular areas, but I had an interesting question here from John Graves, who says, were there any Indiana cities that reduced their police budget? Are we aware of any Indiana cities?
No, I don't know that, but I can actually look that up real quick right here if you want me to.
Sure, while you're doing it, I think it's a good question to know, locally or in our state, what police forces might have been reduced. It's always interesting to know what's affecting us here locally in our states and cities. And I'm in the Indianapolis area. I'm not even sure whether Indy decreased their budget at all.
That's a great question. I didn't see it listed under the cities. Let's see. These are calls across country to fund police departments, and some of those are happening here in the Circle City. It comes after members of the city council in Minneapolis pledged to disband. They're saying here in Indianapolis that the city leaders were already saying they're working on police reform. I don't know what a use of force review board is. I get. Oh, okay. I know what that is. Yeah, use of force review. So they have a use of force review board.
I see. Good question. we
Right.
might have to come up with some statistics and bring that out in the roundtable coming up at the end of the month or so. But,
That's a great question. I would like to know, because some of, like, you get up towards South Bend and stuff like that, I just feel like that's much more of a liberal area. So
yeah, that upper northwest corner.
Right.
I would tend to think that, you take cities like Gary and what have you.
Yeah.
I tend to believe that there probably was some reductions up in those areas, but it's a good question, John, and we will have to get back to that answer at some point here. Whether we could answer it on our Facebook page or in our next COS Indiana live show. So thanks for that, John.
Yeah, thank you, John. That was a great question.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this up again. I don't want to get too far off base, and we probably aren't. We probably need Marty Wood on board to answer this question. But I found it kind of an interesting question, because I think we will get into the elections and some of that going forward. But I think this was asked a couple times in a row, and Scott has asking, why is Indiana ceding election oversight to Ball State and the State Department? I really don't know the answer to this or the details, but and I'm sure it's not falling under what you were studying for tonight. But I just wanted to bring it up as something that maybe you had some insight to this, but I don't know why. I don't know why the election procedures are being funneled through that. So, Marty Wood, if you're on tonight, go ahead and throw that into our chat section. Maybe I can get an answer. That's the reason why I threw it up there, is maybe Marty or Gary or somebody who knows, the procedure for that can answer that question for Scott. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I don't know whether you had any insight to that or not.
No, I don't. And I'm wondering, what is the normal procedure for election oversight? They're saying they're seating at the Ball State and the State Department, but how does that differ from normal? What have we done in the past? I mean, I'm not really even sure where that comes from.
We'd have to look at kind of a history of that. And that's why I was kind of hoping maybe if I threw it up there, maybe if Marty was on, he'd be able to.
Right.
Hang in there, Scott. We'll get that answer one way or the other. Tune in maybe next week. We'll get the answer from Marty, and we'll get that out there. But it's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah, and Ken, if you want to send me those questions too in an email, I'll look into them too if you want me to.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, if you're pretty much wrapped up on the FBI, what was your last area?
Oh yeah, that's the Border Patrol. Yeah. So the CPB or the CBP, which is the Customs and Border Protection Agency, which is an agency of the Department of Homeland Security. So they welcome people into the U.S., follow the rules for immigration, right? And we only want people to enter our country who do it following the rules. We love immigrants, but we like them to do it the way that we set out. They have certain things they have to do. They have certain period of time they have to wait. They have certain things they have to learn. And there's a reason for that, because you want a good citizen.
Sure.
And so those rules were thought out and decided on by probably a board of people long ago and have been updated over the years. So we set the laws and the rules. So now we need to follow them.
I've never understood the difference when you talk to people. There's legal and there's an illegal, and there's a legal way of driving. There's an illegal way of driving. There's a legal way of gun ownership and an illegal way of gun ownership. I mean, it's pretty much, again, we're a nation of laws, and I've never understood why this has become such a stalemate, I guess, in figuring out why we can't have a good procedure to getting immigrants into the country. Again, we want people, but we want people that are gonna that truly want to become American citizens for all the reasons we love living here, and they're going to contribute in some way. I mean, to just bring on thousands of people and put them into our welfare rolls and our schools and put this all on the taxpayer. I can't make the connection between people who can't understand it.
Well, I think this is my personal opinion, but I think that that's how you break the system. You keep doing that, you just overdo it. So the system breaks, and then that's a great lead in for, oh, well, let's try socialism because obviously the capitalistic system isn't working and all the things that you're doing in your economy and your government. So now we have to try something different. But a socialism with a country that runs by laws made by the people don't go together. And those who are pushing socialism know that. So they're trying to break all the rules, but they're coming up with narratives that say, well, this is why we're breaking the rules. We're breaking the rules for the police here because these people were treated bad by the police, and they're isolated incidents, here and there, just like any department you find an accounting department, go across the country and find all the accounting departments and companies, and you're going to find some people who are cooking the books, right? They're not doing it right.
Right.
But we don't punish every accountant because of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if you continue to push your nation over the limits of its laws and you don't follow them, then you open yourself up for chaos. And chaos says, okay, we need to bring in something new where somebody can control what's going on.
It's right out of the book, right out of the Marxist book, is the how to do that. Create the chaos, break the system, and then introduce the government's answer to everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so totally against what our forefathers had in mind for this country, and certainly we're aware of that because they were fleeing all that to begin with.
Right.
They had experienced that, and they knew what that was like. So yeah, it's a fight, and we're in it.
Yeah, and if you look at what they're doing right now, a lot of the systems they're setting up are socialistic. I mean, I even know because, like with Medicare, those people who are on certain medications where the cost went up, they're charging everybody. They've gone up. Everybody's rates have gone up, even if they're not a diabetic or somebody like that needs that high price medicine. So everybody's paying for this certain person over here who has to get this certain kind of medicine that went way up. Look at the loan forgiveness on the school debt. That's just socialism. Mm-hmm. So they're taking our tax money that we're all paying. I paid my way through college, and I paid all my loans off, and I worked hard.
And now they're wanting you to pay for somebody else's. Yeah.
Right. And but now they're taking my tax money and they're giving it to people they wanted to go to, where the other guy who maybe makes a little bit more, they have to pay for their own. So it's just socialism. They just make it look different, but that's all it is.
Another way of dividing us into little groups and putting labels on everybody. And I guess and again, another hot topic coming. I mean, at some point, I hear so much about communist China and their social credit standings is something that I think is just hiding behind all of this.
Oh yeah,
they want to be able to put just like your credit score will become your social credit score, and if you're in the wrong score, you can't go to the theater, you can't leave your house, you have to do what they say, what time, when they say it, and what time they say it, and I think that's even a scarier projection that we have to. And another reason why we really have to, really get out and vote in November. We have to make this change.
We do. And we know just recently, this past week, both PayPal and I think it was Spotify came out and said, hey, if you're going to do certain things, we're going to yank your stuff and we're going to put you on hold. And so, I mean, that's your money right there.
Well, yeah. And another example, look what Chase Bank did to Kanye West. Took his assets or froze them. I don't know exactly the technical area of what they did, but there's a big bank that just did exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Said, no, I'm sorry, we don't like what you said.
That is so communistic right there. I can't even believe that is happening in our country. So You're right. No, the elections is where it's all at. So.
Yeah. And we can't be worried about fraudulent the aspects of that and that happening. If you look at that and you say, well, my vote's not going to count anyway because there's going to be so much fraud that it doesn't matter. That's the wrong way to look at it. That is one of the outside of the Convention of States that were projecting here to solve some of these problems. Our one of our only ways to combat this is our right to vote, and you have to get out to the polls, and you have to drag 10 neighbors with you this time
Right.
around. We
Overwhelm them.
Yeah, we can't sit on the sides.
And then be a part of the process. If you could be a poll worker or a poll watcher or any of those, there's so many different things that people need help with to make that day go as smoothly and as honestly as possible.
It's like our state director, Dale. That's what Dale's doing tonight.
Right, there you go.
Learning his duties for participating in this upcoming election. So
yeah.
Well, Debbie, did you have anything more on border protection?
Well, yeah, and tell me how we're doing on time. I've got 7:40, so what would you say? A couple more minutes? Is that okay?
Minutes, because I do have an interesting video, which I think I'd like to show. It's about a 5 to 6 minute video that I think will be interesting, and we can certainly talk a little bit more about that and take the last bit of this in. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me just give you a minute or so here. So the Customs and Border Protections Agency, or the CBP, they are at all of our borders, our land, sea, and air borders. And what I mean by air borders is people coming in on international flights. But we have 328 or 29 ports of entry in our country between land, sea, and air, which is amazing. They employ 60,000 plus employees in this agency. Over 45,000 are sworn federal agents and officers, and they are the ones that guard these 329 air, sea, and land ports of entry. So in one day, a typical day for them is they process close to 1 million passengers and pedestrians at the ports of entry. In one day, about 300,000 by air, 50,000 by ship, about 700,000 by land or border through Canada or Mexico. They process 65,000 trucks, rail cars, and sea containers. They refuse at least 500 people a day to enter the U.S. This was an interesting stat. For arrests in May alone, there were 239,416 arrests in just the Southwest.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And in February, it was back at 165,000. So it was almost a 50% increase from February to May.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just so many ports of, I never imagined that many ports of entry. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have 5,000 miles of border with Canada, 1,900 miles of border with Mexico, 95,000 miles of U.S. shoreline to guard the ports of entry. And the largest single group coming across our border is the single male. Just so everybody knows, it's not the woman and the child and all the children.
Not the child. Yeah.
So in 2021 alone, 1.6 million encounters. And the figure I got the other night listening to somebody that is involved said since Biden came into office, 5 million people.
Wow.
Now, some of those are doubles, like they go back, they get.
And come back again. Yeah, both time and time again. Right. Yeah. Well, with that, Debbie, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video up because I think it speaks directly to what you're talking about here and does tie in all we're talking about with our security, and our police, and we're going to go ahead and bring that video on. I'll bring you back up if we have any more questions, or if you'd like to talk a little bit more about that. But appreciate your stats and your input tonight.
Oh, you bet.
Right, we'll be right back.
Okay.
We're now cleaning up.
I broke this story from a Special Forces soldier in Mexico a few years ago. I got multiple death threats over this when they were not happy, but this is the elite group. It's got millions of views around the world because for the first time, Americans finally began to wake up and see just how powerful these cartels were becoming as their first, second, and third, and fourth generation armored vehicles and their assault teams were amassing. The training they go through is basic, intermediate, and advanced. They're trained by Special Forces units from Cabeles in Guatemala, from Gafe in Mexico, and many, many others.
We've tried the theory for over a year, maybe a year and a half now we're closing in on, not quite. And while there have been some marginal benefits, you've built some more wall, if you look at the numbers crossing into your state, invading your state, that has not changed. And so what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Yes, this is the federal government's primary responsibility, but states on the border have the ability to defend themselves and to repel the invasion.
Iran, Hezbollah, Iranian intelligence services notoriously infiltrated this country with Hezbollah and Iranian IRGC. They're here. If you want to come in, you come in that way. These are the types, it's not just African war criminals, it's espionage. We, as sure as I'm standing here, we have imported spies from China, Iran, and Russia here. They're here, and they came in over the border, and we'll find out about it eventually.
I mean, it's common sense, but there's this whole campaign of ideological subversion to twist what is real, twist what is effective, so that we no longer understand what works and what's effective, and we'll give it up without a fight. There's a whole campaign behind this, folks.
And anyone that says, well, it's the federal government's job. And so what's their solution? We're going to wait 2.5 years and hope we get a president that secures the border? Every day, 300 people die of fentanyl. So are they okay with that many thousands of people dying that can be prevented? How many people are politicians okay with dying before Texas does something? That's what it comes down to. How many people can we take dying? To me, it should be 0.
The fact of the matter is, we could have a secure border in a matter of days. We could have a secure border in a matter of days. 100% secure, might be a little tougher. Got to get the infrastructure in place, got to get a wall in place. But if you change policy, which you could do with the stroke of a pen, with the leadership, you could change the policy. You could have a secure border immediately.
However, if they don't acculturate, if they don't adapt, if they don't integrate, then what does that do to the quality of life of our communities? You know, now here I am, brown as can be, but I'm telling you, my friends, I want people to have American values. That's what has made our country great. I want them to learn English. I'm tired of prima uno para español. I'm tired of that. You know, if you don't want to learn and acculturate, ¿para qué chingados vienes? All right? You know, the subtitle, why the heck do you come?
What we stand by is that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that that we follow the process that's been put forth. That's why we have historic funding to do just that, to make sure that to make sure that the folks that we encounter at the border be removed or expelled.
The United States Border Patrol's job, I'm overly simplifying this, I know, but the United States Border Patrol's job is to simply patrol in between those ports of entry, in between the front doors, and just make sure nobody comes into our home outside the front door. Does that make sense? Does that sound racist or xenophobic when you do it at your own home? Does it sound like it should be when you do it at a national level? My experience in California over the years was I could interact with some of the people that prior to face-to-face conversation, every indicator I would have had is they were about as far left-leaning open borders as you could possibly think.
My point is about the Africans that are coming to our border with no identification, saying that from countries where that sort of thing is happening right now, we don't know whether they are victims or victimizers. We will never know it, maybe until 20 years go by when we figure out they've been living among us, taking refuge here because they tossed their ID and we just let them in. That's the problem with the Africans. I'm not
disparaging all Africans who are coming here. I get it. There's going to be a bunch of them who are persecuted, who are going to come up, from Cameroon. There's a civil war going on between the Francophiles and the Anglophiles, and they're both murdering each other in horrible atrocities. And I've met a ton of Cameroonians. I'm like, why are you coming here? And they're like, oh, I was being murdered and my people. How do I know that? You're a young, 25-year-old, dude who'd be perfect for any militia over there. And there's a whole bunch of you coming in here from the Congo. The slaughter, rape, and massacres going on over there in the Congo are just the stuff of the worst horror movies that you could conjure up in Hollywood.
Well, I know that's the video was a little on the long side, but I think it really points out a lot of what Debbie and I were talking about tonight. And I know there's a question here that I think was answered, and I'll just go ahead and bring that up. I think John brought up another one. He brought up a question saying that I've heard that not controlling the border is the direct responsibility of the president and therefore an impeachable offense. Is that true? I think it was answered tonight. If you looked at the White House's bumbling, I don't know, the person who really can't read a binder, her own binder, tried to explain that they're trying to do everything they can, and it is a responsibility of the president, and it is an impeachable offense. I just want to go ahead and reiterate that they are directly responsible, because I think you heard in that policy, we could change it tomorrow in a day. The signature of a pen could change this. So I want to bring Debbie up one more time before we go on and do our last segment. I know we're running out of time, but Debbie, did you have any other thoughts to that as we look at that video and some of the comments?
Yeah, I was right taking notes. I put down the word insane that guy said, because excuse me, what we're doing is insane. Only about a third of the people coming across the border are from Mexico, and more in the last 2 years, they're coming from all over the world, not just the typical Honduras and some of their Brazil. You got Venezuela, a lot of your socialistic countries. But what I would say is that the job of the government is to protect its citizens.
Yep.
And so to me, when you go against that intentionally, you take away the policies that did that and you leave the border open, I feel like that's close to treason. Like, you are going against what you're supposed to be doing with your country. You are hurting your nation by doing that.
Yep.
And when you have a vice president says, I don't see an issue at the border, there's no problem at the border, something is very wrong.
Yet she said previously, before she was vice president, when she was just back in law enforcement in California, she said that was, she directly reversed her position on that once she got into the White House. So, yeah. Well, Debbie, I know we're running short on time, and I'm going to try and squeak in the Slido presentation tonight. So I do appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you kind of not only being my guest, but kind of being my co-host tonight. So appreciate you sitting in. We're going to go ahead and let Marengo take over, and we're going to try and get our Slido in here tonight. So thanks again.
Thanks. Lots of fun.
Yeah, good to see you. Okay, we're going to let Marengo take it over, and we're going to try and get our Slido in. So we'll get him started.
Time for Raise Your Voice, the segment that features you. Scan the code and join the fun. It's your turn to be heard.
that'll bring up the results here for Slido tonight. It's going to be a pretty simple one. So as we are running a little short on time, we're going to go ahead and get started on the Slido and just get ready to answer a few questions for us. So here's number one. And it's a text question. So what is your biggest concern in November? I know elections are probably going to be top notch. This is, again, a text area. So I'm just curious if there's any other concerns other than the election, and we're welcoming your input on that as to what your biggest concern in November is. And you can be specific on that. Is it the states that have not corrected their areas? Is it outside influence? Is it big tech? So I mean, you can be specific with this. I kind of am looking for that, not just, well, the elections is my biggest concern. I'm looking for some specifics here. So if you've got some areas that are of real particular concern, we'd like to know that so that we can discuss that before the elections actually arrive. So give you a little more time here. Seeing voter fraud. So can you be even a little more specific? Can you give me more specifics on voter fraud? Is it the fact that there's mail-in voting? Is it the fact that we allow 3 or 4 weeks to vote? Is it big tech? Is it big tech that's influencing the vote? If you can give me some specifics, that's kind of what we're looking for. So we'll leave this up for a little bit longer and hope to get some other answers on that. But that's kind of, there's so many fragments of information. So there's one there, mail-in ballots. There's so many little fragments in different areas of fraud. Fraud is such a broad term. That's kind of why I'm looking for something that's a little more specific. So if you've got a few other very specific areas, and be aware that this is something that you can also you can contribute to this right out and through tomorrow at this same QR code. So we have bias polling affecting turnout. Okay, election integrity. Does every vote count, and is every vote legitimate? So there's some interesting comments coming in, and we appreciate your input on that. We would look to answer some of those questions coming on. So we'll move on to our second one tonight, and that is, do you think there will be a significant change in people who will be volunteering at the voting booths this year? So do you think that we'll have a change of the guard? I guess is what I'm looking for there. Yes, no, or never enough. Do you think there will be a significant change in people who will be volunteering at the voting booths this year? I'm wondering how well. So far we've got a no vote and some yes votes. I'm wondering whether are we making a big enough impact on people to get involved, I guess is what I'm looking for here. And we still have about 80% of the people that think that we're not making that big of a change. So hopefully the answer is yes, we've made a big enough impact and more people did get involved. We have more eyes in our voting booths this year. That's what I'm looking for, more eyes in the voting booths. So thanks for your participation on that. We'll move on to our last one. And this is a quiz, and this should be a pretty easy one, I think. Join the quiz. We're going to give you 30 seconds on this quiz. Jump in here. It's going to be an easy one, so not a hard question tonight, but just to see if you've been paying attention to any previous broadcasts that we've had. So join in and do the quiz here. We've got Kelly jumping in. Get a few more people in the quiz. We're going to get it started here. John Graves, John is brought on. Thanks, John. Gonna join in on the quiz here. There's no right or wrongs really, but well, there is a right, but there's no money involved here, so you don't win any prizes. But we'll get started with the quiz tonight. So you got 30 seconds to answer. What does Dale Parish promise those who earn COS recognition awards? So as you know, Dale gives out recognition awards throughout the year. We have the Patriot Pin, and we have our state self-governance pin that we give out. So does he give out a coupon to Chick-fil-A? Is it an invite to COS Indiana Live? Does he give them a raise once his Social Security check arrives, or does he just give people a pat on the back? Do we have anybody who knows the answer to this? That's going to be the question. And if you don't know, take a guess. I think Dale will be surprised. So that's our question for the night. Dale promises something to those who receive COS recognition awards. And so far, we don't have any answers, which I guess everybody is stumped on this tonight. And I don't think I'd stump Dale on this one. But we've got nobody who wants to answer that, as I can see. We might have to give away the answer. So nobody wants to take a guess. Give us a quick guess. A coupon, an invite to be on COS Indiana Live, a raise once his Social Security check arrives, or a pat on the back. All right, we got nobody venturing to answer that quiz question tonight. So we'll just go ahead and give you the answer. Actually, Dale promises that the raise will come from his Social Security check once that arrives. And of course, at this point, I don't think anybody's received the raise as a bonus. So that's our quiz for the night. We hope that you enjoyed being with us tonight on our Slido polling for the night, and we hope that you've enjoyed the show. I know we've gone just a little bit over here, but we want to welcome everybody back at some point next week. Because I don't have any of the banners that Dale usually has, I want to remind everybody that we will have a roundtable on October 24th. That'll be the last Monday of the month. On October 24th will be our roundtable format. And if you have any type of I'm getting some words here that the voting closed too soon to respond. I'm sorry if there was a delay on that. Anyway, if you have questions or comments that you'd like to make, you can always send them to raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. That's raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. And we'll be glad to handle any of your comments or questions there. And again, a reminder that October 24th will be our next roundtable event. And of course, Dale will be back next Monday, so we can get back into our regular format. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's program, and we'll also put in a plug for our newest format that'll be coming out in a podcast, and that'll be available in a couple of weeks, hopefully, where that is going to be called COS Indiana Live Voices, and that'll be a podcast format. So we hope to be giving you some more insight and depth to the people that certainly give their talent and time to the Convention of States here in Indiana. And there's some amazing people that do. So with that, I want to say thanks again to Debbie for joining me, and hope everybody has a good night, and we'll see you all back next week. Good night now.